Welcome everybody to the Stellar Encode Educate series. Thank you everyone for joining us. Lovely to see so many of you waiting in the chat, and I can still see more people joining even at this stage. So great to have such a nice turnout, and I hope you're excited to start the beginning of our 4-series workshop. We have a lovely kind of lots of range of speakers lined up over the next 4 weeks. It will be the same time every week, so hopefully that serves as an easier reminder. But as the day goes on, I'll be able to run through all the important details on those. But apart from that, I hope you're having a good evening wherever you are. Feel free to put in the chat. It might be the morning, might be the evening, depending on your time zone. So we'd love to know where everyone is joining us from. I can see Federico from Argentina, which is very cool. Much rather be there than London right now, but this is where most of the Encode team does actually reside. We also have a nice part of our team in Croatia, and Eomji, who will be joining us, is based in Germany. So I can, a lovely range. Preston from the UK as well, not so far afield, potentially less exotic than than Argentina, but that is only a matter of perspective. So I think without further ado, I think as we started a little bit later on, so I think we can get into the presentation. I'd like to just start off with a brief introduction of actually what Encode does before we get into anything Stellar related. And to begin, I just introduced myself. I'm Michael. I'll be the program manager for the kind of this whole Educate series. So feel free to get in contact with me if you have any questions or kind of need anything between sessions. That you can see my Twitter there, which you can contact me. And you should also be kind of on Encode's Discord, where I'll be posting announcements and reminders about anything important. So a little bit about Encode Club. So what is Encode Club? Essentially, it's we're a Web3 education community, and we help devs learn, build, find their career path in emerging tech. And there are a number of ways that we actually do this. One of them is the Educate, where you find yourselves right now. It's kind of an open space for people to learn. I think the difference between Educate and boot camps, sometimes our boot camps are slightly more selective. So you might have pre-existing knowledge about, say, for example, Solidity, and we're kind of running like an expert Solidity boot camp in order for people to really hone in on their skills. We also run lots of hackathons. We're currently running Solana hackathon, Lightning hackathon, ICP, and is a really good chance for people to build on skills potentially that they've learned in boot camps or Educates. We also do recruitment, so kind of getting jobs for our kind of community of developers. And we even run accelerators, so taking early stage projects and actually one day turning them to startups. And Encode actually has a lovely track record of doing this, which is great to see from people that have been in our community, have really gone through on this journey. And there's over 500,000 of us, which is amazing. So that brings us back to what we're here for today, and that is the Stellar Encode Educate series. We have a lovely partnership with the Stellar Development Foundation, who are supporting us today in order to do this. And we have, as I said, 4 exclusive workshops providing kind of insights into Stellar's technology. And I think so today that begins with an introduction to Stellar and Soroban from Eomji, who we'll be hearing from shortly, who is the head of research and operations at Encode. Next week, we'll also have the chance to have an introduction to Rust and Soroban. And this will be from Morgan Wild, the founder at Akashi. In a couple of weeks' time, we can also look forward to blockchain basics, kind of developing your first dApp on Stellar using Soroban, and that will be from Julian Martinez, a senior development advocate from the Stellar Development Foundation. And after that, our final and 4th workshop will be from BG from Subquery, who will be providing a workshop on data indexing. So yeah, so that, without further ado, that leads us on to what our workshop is on today. And as I said, it will be from Eomji Park, the head of research and operations at Encode Club, who will be giving an intro to Stellar and Soroban. So I would just like to invite her to the stage now so that we can hear a little bit more about her presentation.
Hello. Hi, everyone. Very nice to meet you. Hi, Michael.
Hi, Eomji.
Okay, good. I see that like excitement in the chat. That's very nice. Some people love Encode Club. Some people love Okashi. Some people love Stella. Loves everywhere. Very, very nice mood. So I'm gonna be sharing my screen now. Let's get started. First, everyone, welcome to Intro to Stellar and Soroban session. I'm Eomji, Encode Club, from Encode Club, head of research and operations. I broadly perhaps like have experience meeting you in different conferences, different bootcamp and hackathon. And today I'm here to share a little bit more about Stellar and Soroban, which is going to be the amuse bouche of this educate series. So you're going to have some high level overview. What is Stellar about? And then you will have like fun time playing with some codes and so later with our other speakers. So first thing first, Stella, what is Stella? I know I see some familiar names. Some of you must be like blockchain OG and some of you must be also quite new to this ecosystem or whole blockchain space. So Stella is a layer 1 open source decentralized peer-to-peer blockchain network. There's like a little warning today so that perhaps if you're very new to the space, there are going to be some tech jargons coming along today. Perhaps layer 1, you're going to be questioning what is layer 1, peer-to-peer. Instead of going everything into so deep, let's say if there's some word keep appearing, try to also ask questions in our Discord server. We're going to be helping you to get that information. And also just by exposed to a lot of different bits, I hope that this is going to help you to understand further all different bits. So as we said, Stellar is a layer one protocol. Layer 1 protocol means like there's multiple like blockchain with a full functionality like a Bitcoin, Ethereum. Perhaps you heard about a lot of different layer 1s. Stellar, its like core design was focused on optimizing payments. So perhaps like you remember that like some years back, like a Stellar, some tutorials about like sending remittance to family living abroad, like borderless transactions. So it makes it easy for us to create certain applications, issuing digital assets, and connecting to existing financial infrastructure. So like perhaps like you want to making stock as an asset, and then maybe you want to connect to different bank towards different countries. So there is like some design in mind to facilitate those kind of financial activities. You can effortlessly generating digital representation of various assets like currencies, commodities, or real estate on Stellar network. So it acts as a bridge, not like a DeFi bridge we are talking about, but kind of connecting those like financial systems at global scale so that you can utilize this one, creating some apps to helping people. So today we will explore some key aspects of it, kind of including issuing assets, creating anchors, which is very Stellar specific term, and developing applications, and also what is Soroban. Perhaps some of you are following Twitter threads like Soroban face rollout, so it can be very nice to share some more about that. So first thing first, you heard about SDF, Stellar Development Foundation. So this is a nonprofit organization dedicated to supporting and developing the Stellar network. So if you look into the different blockchain network, you're often going to see that either like a foundation is behind or like there's a labs and foundation or like an Inc. So there's a different entities or sometimes there's solo entities supporting those development. So you can see that Stellar Development Foundation is behind all this initiative. Its mission is to create equitable access to global financial system, focusing on development and growth of Stellar. And then SDF plays a key role of multiple things, maintaining Stellar's code base, also supporting technical and business communities around Stellar. So you can see that they're like promoting the adoption of the Stellar and also providing education material. And also it serves as a voice of like regulatory policy discussion comes, then foundation may share their opinion. So it aims to advance the reach and functionality of Stellar, and you can see there like some other initiative behind, and we're going to see like one of the developer advocate joining at the third session. So this time, we are creating like a fun series to introducing some basics and also Soroban functionality, but where should you start? I always like to start from the consensus. So what is the consensus? Consensus is hugely important in a decentralized system. So it's kind of like a way to agree on something, as if like, how can we decide our lunch menu? But of course, in blockchain, like we were not deciding our lunch menu, but let's use some easy analogy for today. So first, it is kind of monitoring and like approving the transactions. And to do so, we need to have like one single source of truth. So this is a method using achieving agreement of single data value or single state of the network among all distributed party across the network. And this across network, like we have a multiple nodes who are participating to this consensus. So you can consider nodes as a computer who is joining them. This node can be run by organizations, individuals, and the goal of this node is like updating whole network ledger together in the same way that they can agree on, so we can keep the one single status together. And of course, this is really important for blockchain concept because kind of blockchain is all about this one, right? Like reaching to consensus quick in distributed system, which is of course difficult comparison to the central one, and we can do it at scale. That's the whole blockchain about why distributed system itself has been perhaps like researched since like 70s. Then you perhaps heard about a lot of consensus mechanism around the market, like proof of work, proof of stake, proof of agreement. Maybe even you are not that familiar with those, like you at least should have heard about like last year, some like there are huge transition happening, like a big protocol moving from proof of work to proof of stake. Now, like, what does it even mean? So proof of work, let's imagine that we have a classroom, like full of like 40 students, let's say. And then we are thinking about deciding our lunch menu. And how are we going to decide the lunch menu? So let's say as a like a kind of like a, how to say, okay, as a student, you kind of want to propose your idea, but not everyone can propose what could be the lunch menu. And then we have a very like a difficult math quiz. And then it says that if you solve this quiz, you can propose the menu. So that is kind of the super oversimplified of the proof of work. So that you need to solve like a cryptography, like a quiz to enter your proposal. And then like perhaps we're going to get that as our lunch menu. And then like you will see that some pros and cons here. So if you cannot like solve the problem, of course, you cannot join. To solve the problem, perhaps you may need a high computational power, which is like a lot of computers. It requires electricity. So there was some discussions about like a environmental effect, but the important thing is proof of work has also its own pros, which was like considered secure. Nobody wants to spend a lot of like electricity to messing up when they are not sure if it can be even successful. So this was one of the prominent consensus mechanism used for a while. And then proof of stake, perhaps you heard a lot. So let's picture about separate like a classroom. So next to the proof of work classroom. So what we're gonna do, we said that all the students who have a student card can join the consensus mechanism. So if you don't have a student card, then you cannot join. So it can be something like a token. But the difference with the student card is like a token can be some multiple token you can hold. So depending on different protocols who are based on proof of stake, yet different consensus mechanism, maybe you will have like a more than one vote because you have a multiple token, or maybe token is just indicator of the voting right, but everyone gonna have the same voting right, or like you may perhaps have a different probability to chosen as a proposer because you have a more vote or less vote. There's a lot of different design. So in a glimpse of proof of stake classroom, if you have a student card, you can join, but how much student card going to be weighing or not is depending on different architecture and design of the protocol. And then proof of agreement. So proof of agreement is like let's say we have a trusted like parties of like students. You know that like they always pick the best lunch menu. It's like that in our team as well. Like I have one colleague called like Katrina. She always chooses the best restaurant. Then I trust her, and she become my like a trusted group. And those trusted group can join, and then like you might be like making the votes. And depending on like a overall concept is trusted party going to be joining this, and then like participating to agreements. Who going to be actually proposing, who going to be trusted party. It will be, again, very different setup depending on each protocol. So you perhaps want to look into different ones. So today, of course, we're going to focus on Stellar consensus protocol, which is based on proof of agreement. So Stellar network reaches its consensus. The name is like Stellar Consensus Protocol is the name. And this is the construction of Federated Byzantine Agreement. What does like a Federated Byzantine Agreement? Like we will look into like very briefly how it is working. But if it sounds like something very foreign, you don't need to worry about that. But this is like something we as just discussed. It's quite different from well-known consensus mechanism like proof of work, where we rely on nodes' computational power, or proof of stake, or like a node staking power if they have a token or not. But this one is we rely on agreement of trusted node, which means that you kind of need to have trusted node in your network, otherwise it may not proceed. So who can join the network? Who can be the trusted one? So setting up a Stellar node and participating in the network is actually open to everyone. So it's not like it's gated that like you cannot join. It's also possible there's a different protocols that like it can be only like permitted by, it's like a not permissionless, but like a permission-based ones. But this one like you can join. But it requires you to disclose their, how to say that, identifying information publicly. So you cannot like completely join anonymously, but you need to share some information about you. And this allows like other nodes to make informed decisions. So they look into your record and they can decide to include you in their trusted network or not. And this is going to be setting a special like trusted group. And each like a Stellar core node, which is joining, which can be like called as a validator. Okay, if you are familiar with other blockchain concept, has autonomy to determine like who's going to be my set of trusted party or not. And this flexible approach given us like open network membership like system. So it's kind of like not controlled by a central party. So someone cannot just decide that you cannot join or not to the network. So it's more like open, but yet it's kind of trusted like a membership system. So some node must trust you that you can join to voting, let's say, consensus mechanism. So when we have enough number of the nodes in these like a trusted overlapping groups, which can be introduced later slightly as well, it's called quorum in Stellar. If they reach the consensus on the validity of the transaction set and its associated assets and actions, then it becomes a permanent addition to the blockchain so that, wow, everyone agree, and then overlapping trust party, we all confirm that, then it will be our like a new single status of the blockchain, right? It's going to be stored in the ledger. And this entire process typically takes between 5 to 7 seconds to complete now. Today, I checked the website, it says like 5.8 seconds. So perhaps you want to play things around and check it out. For being a validator at the moment, there are no financial incentives for becoming a validator on the network, but instead, like it's highly encouraged to take this role and contribute to the network, to having a secure network around the world. As we talked about it, you kind of need to be showing your identifying information, so you can perhaps look into the network, try to identify what kind of validators are existing out there. And also there's great tutorials to set up your node. So perhaps you want to try things out. I am checking the chat time to time, but I may miss something. So if you have a question, perhaps you can we can talk about it later on. And yes, hi everyone. Cool. So how does it work? We talked about quorum a little bit. So the process of confirming transaction works a little bit like this. Again, let's go back to the classroom. So imagine that we have a class and then we need to decide the lunch menu. And instead of 40 students all discussing at the same time, we just form a group. There's some small group of the students, I don't know, 5, 5, 5. In this picture, you can see that 4 of each group. And then in this group, perhaps you have some students you trust more their taste of the lunch, right? That person going to be picking the best one so that you have your trusted set. And that's called quorum slice, what kind of quorum you are trusting. So first, you will decide which of your fellow students you want to work with and form a group. That's the quorum set. You see the 4. And then among them, you're going to have the one you particularly trust more, not particularly trust more, to be precise, trust, and the other, you are not sure. And then those one is quorum slice. But that's just your group. But in the classroom, we have a lot of different groups, right? So to have a general consensus, we need to reach the agreement of the every groups so that you will need the members outside of your group you kind of trust. And then when this overlapping quorum slices, reach to the agreement, that's called like a proof of agreement, and we can order the lunch menu finally. And of course, like we will not perhaps use this method to choose the lunch menu. It's highly complicated, but you can see that how this can be like a reach fast in the node, so that it can be still secure, but like a fast network. We can see. And then now let's think about we have a group, but okay, we just talked about it. Even in the proof of stake or like in the other direction, depending on you have a stake or not, it has a difference. It's like how voting is working, who's going to be proposing the menu, who's going to be actually voting the menu. So there's a slight differences. In Stellar, it's the same. So they're like so agreement, we all know that now we have a small group in the classroom and we're going to come to the agreements, and there should be some kind of overlapping group, but how does voting works? So let's look into how federated voting in SCP is working. So their node can have 4 different opinions on the statement. So one is like I don't have a knowledge. So like when I say like a pizza, burger, what is more healthy? I can say I don't have a knowledge for that. But on the other hand, I can say that I think pizza is more healthy. So they're like you can say that like it's healthy, but you are not sure if you actually need to order that. And then the third is okay, you accept that like oh, I think kind of pizza is good because I see that others are also agreeing, but I still am not sure this is the right one to go. But then confirm is the way they're like okay, you see that either like it got accepted by others, or like if you confirm it like the other way around of consensus cannot happen. And then all this like a transition between status are following the rules below, you can see. So either it votes, so they're like it vote, they're like, oh, based on my previous like last 10 days I was keep saying that pizza is like better than hamburgers, and I'm gonna vote for the pizza. This is slightly stupid example, but just like take the knowledge from that, so that I need to kind of keep my consistency of the like let's say bookkeeping, right? Once I said that like that person has a $5 and $10, next day I said that no, actually that person has $1 million, would not be allowed. So it means that you need to kind of see your previous votes in a way, not necessarily you're reading the ledger, but it means that you need to have a consistent voting. And then you can accept it either or no's in your quorum slice, vote for, let's say, or like the blocking set accept A. So blocking was like there's a kind of 2 different no's were like a blocking one that. And then we're gonna have like a confirming if every node in your quorum slice accept A. So this is like a kind of rough structure how voting gonna be working, and this even consensus round gonna have 2 different stage. One is like a nomination protocol, and second is like a ballot protocol. So in nomination stage, like we're gonna have candidate transaction stats are chosen for ledger inclusion. So like it's gonna be like decided that during that phase. And then ballot protocol, it's gonna happen like an anonymous confirmation and application of nominated transaction sets happening. But what it is all about, like we now talked about a lot of like federated voting, like quorum slices, blocking sets. All these things are like slightly theoretical and quite difficult. And do we need it every day as a user? Of course not. Do we need it every day as a developer? Also not. So what we need to know, we're going to look into a little bit more. But why we were talking about all this? So what I wanted to say is like once when you become a developer, so when you're a blockchain developer, not protocol developer, but app developer, let's say, maybe you perhaps don't need to think about consensus mechanism or like what is the benefit of that blockchain too much, because actual experience of building app is maybe not that different from A to B. But perhaps still you want to know what is their design principle, what is that made for, to decide which platform to build on. So you can see that like once when you look into Stellar document, because Stellar was like starting from this like boosting financial how to say that like transactions. So you can see the even in the design principle, they were like more focusing on safety than liveness. It doesn't mean that the blockchain is like not live and like stopping all the time, but it's more like when they were making a design decision for them, it is more important to building the safe like a blockchain. So such as this consensus mechanism, please take it as a bit of taste of like what kind of blockchain you're working on. And if you're interested in this, I highly recommend to read like more documentation, even like white papers. But on the other hand, if you're like a developer who are building app, this is not something you need to understand necessarily in depth, but just like once like read about it is good enough. Cool. So Stellar Stack. So while all those concepts we were talking about is very interesting, most developers building on Stellar will not be like focused on those in protocol level or like directly interacting with the Stellar core on daily basis. Instead, you will be mostly working with the SDK, or like you will be perhaps playing things around with the Soroban clay if you're making the Stellar. Yes, but yes, exactly. So Soroban to building a smart contract. So this setup follows a kind of three-tiered stack of responsibilities. So each serving its own role. One is like, let's say SDK. All of you, perhaps, especially if you're a developer, you might be quite familiar with. So these kits facilitate access to the Horizon API and then Soroban RPC. So allowing developers to work in various programming languages, like talking to those. It's kind of like essential for requesting data, creating, submitting transactions, interacting with the smart contracts. So it's quite abstracted level you're working with so that you don't need to talk to network directly. Soroban Clay is in the same direction. It's a command line interface for Soroban, which we're going to talk about briefly later on as well. So like this player allows like you to build, deploy, and interact with the smart contracts on Stellar blockchain. So you can generate key pairs, manage networks, or like issuing assets, all different bits. When you are like using this one, so like basically Clay is translating your commands into RPC request, so that it will be talking to the RPC following JSON RPC protocol. Now, so what's next? The Horizon API and Soroban RPC. So Horizon API is like this service is like kind of client-facing HTTP API server. So it facilitates programmatic access for submitting transaction and querying historical data on the network. So you don't do it directly again, but you go through the API. So this is like a kind of interface for the application that need to interact with the network. While it's possible to use public like an API, if you're building your own application, so they're like for production applications, it's recommended to run your own Horizon instance. RPC is like perhaps like many blockchain developers like I heard a lot about RPC. So RPC and Stellar, particularly for Soroban, which is going to be quite interesting, going to mainnet soon. It's a server that allows users and applications to interact with the smart contracts on Stellar blockchain, which is like Stellar has been working last 2 years very hard to make this like smart contracts function on the chain, which we're going to look into a little bit later as well. So it processes requests from applications and translate them to the blockchain nodes and return the result. So these two is like serving in between those connections. And then Stellar Core, we talked about it a few times beforehand. So the nodes. So this is the foundational component of the Stellar network. So those nodes are connected, and they like is the they are making the Stellar network. So those Stellar cores are maintaining this like a distributed network. This is like participating the consensus process to like validate and process those transactions. So like once when like API call is made, this like a node going to be saying that, okay, this is the next status we can store into the blockchain. And then Stellar Core updates, we talked about it every kind of 5-7 seconds through the consensus. Anyone can join and contributing to the Stellar governance, but at the same time, like you need to have some identifying information in public. And those Stellar has like 3 different network, which is like a public network called like a mainnet. Also, sometimes people call it pubnet, and test network and dev network, which is also futurenet. So mainnet is the main network used by applications in production. So if you're using some apps, some applications on Stellar, that's already on mainnet. And the testnet is something smaller, free-to-use network maintained by a foundation. And this function like mainnet, but doesn't connect it to real money, real value. Ideally, it shouldn't be, unless people like, want to, how to say that, like get the test token. But it barely happen. It can happen, but it shouldn't be in principle. So this is the best place developers can build something freely and testing things around. If you go to Stellar like a laboratory, you can actually easily making your key pair and getting some test token to test things around. So I'm going to share the link later as well. And then FutureNet is a dev network you can use to test more like a kind of edge features. But if you're going to the hackathon or like being in this educate series, mainly you're going to be interacting with the test network. So overall, developing on Stellar primarily involves that using SDK and interacting with the Horizon API, or like using Soroban CLI, like making like a RPC and talking to the network. So all working together at this kind of making a seamless development on network across various like programming languages. Even you may use different one, different SDK, and then creating some app. Again, like you don't need to think about underlying backend infrastructure of the network and consensus and what kind of protocol update has been made at the first like instances. So you're gonna perhaps focus on like app interactions, and perhaps like there's the that's something like you're gonna try out next 3 sessions, realize that, okay, actually I didn't need to know about every blockchain backend, how it architectured, but I just need to understand what value, what philosophy, it's like the ethos of the ecosystem. And then if I like the, the whole infrastructure or like a toolkits, which makes it easier to build something on top of it. So Stellar also has its account. A lot of if you already have like some public key, like some accounts in different blockchain, it might be quite familiar concept. So Stellar account is a fundamental entity of the Stellar network. So if you're joining network, like if you want to if you want to create a transaction, sending some money, or like issuing some assets, you basically need the account. So each account has a unique alphanumeric address, as you can see under the public and under private. So public one starting with a G, private with starting with S. So if you're not sure like what public private key means, this is really important. What you need to really like focus. So what happened? So Stellar account has a key pair, public key and private key. This public key is something similar to home address, email address, so that people can kind of identify you by this. And this is public information. If they want to send something to you, they're going to use this address to send it to you. And then like if you want to vote somewhere, perhaps you're going to be visible with this address, and then like this is kind of identified for you. You can have, of course, multiple addresses. Private key is used to authorizing something on behalf of this public key. So while public key is like a kind of, as it says, public information, private key should be something confidential, and you shouldn't also forget about it. Perhaps like you saw some news that someone forget about private key, and then like a hard drive is like somewhere, and then you got completely like lost like billions of money. So it's private key is the way you can access to your account, and this shouldn't be shared to anybody. You can go to, again, like Stellar laboratory to try to generating key pair and so on. But in reality, if you want to keep the test account, also you shouldn't be sharing to anybody, but rather like keep the private key safe somewhere. And your Stellar account can hold various digital assets issued on Stellar network. It can be like a Lumens, which is a native token, or custom token, NFTs, like a lot of different bits. This account balance represents the amount of the asset held by your account. And this account can initiate different types of transactions, and to make the transaction happen, as we talked about, private key must be used to prove your ownership, so that like everyone know this address. Do I have key of this address that I have access? And then you need to so that to prove your ownership and authorization. So another bit is to receive and hold asset issued by other parties. So not Lumens, which is a native token. Account must establish a trust line. Perhaps like an easy analogy can be, you can opt in. So if you don't opt in, you will not be able to receive that asset, but you need to establish the trust line, then you can receive the third-party assets. It means that you kind of show your willingness to accept and hold that asset. And to create an account, you must deposit a minimum balance, which is like a 1 lumen. It is Stellar native digital currency. So first thing first, XLM, this is like, like the acronym, or not actually acronym, how to say the short version way of saying like in Lumen. So Stellar network was made to support digital representation of any currency, but it also has its own native currency, which is used as like a, transaction fee and so on for the overall network. The name is Lumen. If it's a plural, it's like Lumens. And what Lumen is doing, so Lumen is like a only token. It does not require issuer because it's already there. And then trust line. So you don't need to opt in for it, but you're going to be automatically having it. It is used to pay all transaction fees and rents. and also cover minimum balance requirements of the network. So minimum balance, what is that? So if you want to have a Stellar account, you must maintain a minimum balance to exist. This is like a 1 lumen at the moment, which is like calculated using base reserve. In my analogy, I would say that it's something similar to deposit. So if you want to have that account, you need to deposit money there, and which is 2 base reserve for the minimum balance at the moment. But if you want to have some other like a sub entry after additional base reserve, let's say, then you need to store more. If you close them, you're going to receive it back. So it's kind of similar to deposit, let's say. On the other hand, like rent is slightly different. And then on the other hand, like when you're using transactions, so like in Stellar, if you're making some transactions or interaction with the network, you need to pay a small fee. So all those small fee, like all transactions to is charged to prevent any spam. So just imagine that if network is completely free. So this is like a very small money, but this is like a super discouraging the like spammers using network for like a nothing. So these transaction fees are paid in lumens, and smart contract transactions on Stellar is having a different fee structure, which we were not going to deep today, but you can look into what is like inclusion fee or resource consumption, which including the rents. And then rent is smart contract data, does not require any base reserve, but to live on ledger, it requires a rent. And this rent is decided by like how big is the entry, how long it should live on the ledger. So depending on that, depending on what smart contract you build and how long you want to keep it in ledger, rent's going to be different. Cool. I can see also people being very active and discussing things. Very nice. Now question is like, what can we do? We talked about it like on Stellar network. There must be like certain like main activities. Like one is like issuing assets. This is like one of the fundamental feature of Stellar. So it allows any form of the value such as cryptocurrency. It can be Bitcoin or Ethereum. You can make it asset on Stellar, or like a fiat currency, which can be dollars, pesos, yen. And then like NFTs, we know like different types of like non-fungible tokens, pool shares or bonds, stock, and other equity. So anything you want to tokenize and efficiently trade on the network, you can issue in here. And those process of issuing assets on Stellar is very easy and accessible to anyone. So like whether you are bank, payment processors, business, non-profits, communities, or like individuals, without any permission, you can create the assets. But just keep in mind, this is different. If you can create the assets or those assets are really considered as money, is different thing. That's the other types of promise, right? So of course, like I just can create a okay, I will call it like a Eomji dollar, and this one Eomji dollar is like a $1 USD. But who's gonna get it? It should have like it should be either backed by some financial institution, or it should be backed by actual like some assets outside of the off-chain assets. So you can issue anything. But of course, like when we want to use it as a like stable coin or something like that, it becomes a whole different story. What kind of things are backing that? So issuing an asset on Stellar is like a straightforward process. You can just issue very easily. However, like depending on the use case, as we talked about, you need to consider like a different compliances and kind of how you're going to managing supply. What is the step of issuing assets? And technically, you can look into those steps now. To 2 accounts you will need to creating an asset. One is like an issuer account and one is distributor account. So you can. It's a kind of best practice. In the documentation, it says that this is a recommended way. So perhaps I can imagine someone going to make like a more accounts to having different types of process. But one, you're going to have an issuer and we're going to have a distributor. And then before this like a complete new asset exists on network, so we need to build a trust line so that I said that not Lumens, but this is completely custom asset. I am willing to receive that. So once when we build that trust line, that asset can be issued, and then like the second account, who is the distributor, can start to distributing that tokens, and that's how in general works in the basic scheme. So assets on Stellar are uniquely identified with the 2 characteristics. One is asset code and issuer. So we talked about it. Maybe I can make Eomji dollar, and then like a micro can make a micro dollar, and then we're gonna have a USD and USDT as well. So all different like a US dollar like a value assets, how can you recognize them? So various companies going to be offering those USD token, and we can differentiate them by ID. They're like an asset code and also issuer, and those information going to be define the uniqueness of that asset. And of course, like a there are going to be always people sometimes tricky about that and changing a little bit to scam people. So if you're using some like how to say, like well-known assets like USDT, USDC, such a thing, you need to like check the public information of the asset code and issuer. Otherwise, you thought you were trading with a specific token which bearing the value, and it can be completely different story. And then anchoring assets. So anchoring is a very Stellar specific term for on and off ramp to connect the Stellar network to traditional financial rails, such as like financial institutions and fintech companies. So perhaps like a lot of you who are not like from actually financial institution, or who are not thinking about having those connections to your app, it's not something you might be very interested in. But these anchors facilitate the process of accepting deposits in fiat currency. For example, people can pay things in US dollar, pesos, or like a we can kind of having like a on-ramp off-ramp process with established channel like a bank deposit and cash-in locations, and then it can provide users like a certain digital token based on those fiat currency they hand in. So these digital tokens can represent, I certainly have weird Alan. No, okay. So these digital tokens can represent the same fiat currency which they like deposited or like exchanged. And then these anchors can enable token holders to exchange their tokens for the real world asset, and after then having like freely transactioning on the network. And like an anchor is like has a capability to issue their own unique assets on the network as well. But as we talked about, anybody can like issuing assets. How it can be recognized? Yes, then you need to go to the compliance, and then like those registers one, we know that okay, they have the money in the bank or have a gold, or it's backed by other bonds or stock, so that it actually has a financial value. So you need to a little bit differentiate that two concepts. So as a developers, like what are your options? If you are actually like a developer from financial institution, you perhaps may choose to become an anchor yourself and then try to building some financial service using Stellar. Otherwise, you may create an app which is incorporating anchor service. So maybe in your app, there's some different transaction happening, but through the anchoring service, people can easily on-ramp, off-ramp with their fiat currency. So it might be much easier if it's a game, but if I want to pay in Korean won a little bit, and then those anchoring service is going to be helping me to change that to token easily and send it to my guild people and so on and so on. And then and building apps. So building apps is like a perhaps most interesting thing for the developers. So Stellar itself is serving as the open source like a distributed infrastructure that you can build something on top of it. So it's just like a powerful backend, and it can support wide range of applications and services. What kind of service do you want to build? Good question. This one, of course, like a lot of famous ones are DeFi. When I just like skim through that, I'm seeing like people talking about some DEX and DeFi protocols. So that is one of the big examples, especially Stellar is also like made a financial infrastructure in mind in the beginning, right? Like it was built for all those like payment infrastructure, but a lot of other things can be built. Like maybe let's think about peer-to-peer insurance. So they may be developing certain insurance product that different people chip in and having a peer-to-peer system around that. Or maybe we can have like a sports game. We talked about it utilizing some random function. It can be much more transparent to see that all the gotchas like a company is making. Maybe we set a specific logic on chain that it actually hit the right value. Or like you can make even some existing services just utilizing this payment much better, so that app like Uber, let's say, but instead of paying like $1 in US and then I don't know pound in London and euro in Germany, if I can pay lumens everywhere, perhaps it might be much easier. So there's a lot of like a fun thing you can make to help real world problem. But on the other hand, please don't limit yourself for the real world problem, because blockchain has a very unique feature, so that maybe there's a problems we did recognize can be like a very fun way it can be served by it. One of the things that we often see is like an NFT royalty problem. It's not something completely new. We always had this royalty problem from long time, and we had like galleries like paying those monies. But having blockchain was enabling smaller artists who doesn't perhaps have like a gallery as an agency, they can actually have this like loyalty in their product. So all those kind of things, we can be perhaps slightly like innovative about like a new applications, and you may get surprised like what kind of app we can make. Now let's go quickly to Soroban. So what is like Soroban? Soroban is a smart contracts platform designed to be sensible, built to scale, batteries included, and developer friendly. But what does it actually mean? And by the way, if you know what Soroban means, not like out of this context, you must be speaking Japanese. I heard that this is Japanese word of calculating things. You know, you are calculating with the little things moving. This is like a new word I learned. So Soroban is a smart contracts platform. So smart contract, what is smart contract? Let's begin by understanding what smart contracts are in the blockchain world, especially for those who are here for kind of learning new concepts. So smart contract is not just a contract in the traditional sense. So it's a kind of piece of code that runs on the blockchain network. And these contracts automatically execute and control or document legally like relevant events or actions according to the term of the contract itself, the code. So like if it sets certain precondition, so by the defined condition, it can be executed automatically. So key characteristic is self-execution when predefined conditions are met, and then it's transparent because it's also stored everything on ledger, and it's immutable. And then also it means immutable means that it's deployed and it cannot be really altered unless like all the parties agreed or something like that. And then this brings a high level of trust and security to digital agreements. Also, it becomes much cheaper because you don't need to have certain like like a middle party who are like securing those transactions happening when it meets the let's say what is that like a certain condition. So let's think about like a auction house or like you go to the horse racing. Instead of having a counter, we're gonna have a smart contract that when number 3 is running, this transaction gonna be happening. So without going through the human labor or like a computer, like someone control over those financial system, we're gonna have like a automatic system which is gonna be executing things. But of course, it's not just for those like financial ones. Or like a simply like auctions or racings, bettings. It's a lot about like once if it's a game, if certain condition hits, maybe next action should happen, and we can actually define the law which people agree on, and we are sure that gonna happen. That's the beauty of it. But of course, when it comes to the game, we don't want to know that like what will be the next action of my game, because you know the code, right? Like then it'll be all not funny. That's the reason why like those random function comes in. So let's say smart contract is the contract predefined, like a condition is there, and when it hits, it's going to be automatically executed so that you don't need an intermediary to taking care of those. And then to having an advanced function, we have now a lot of different like research is going on, either hiding like a partial informations or like making certain things random, so we can utilize smart contract in different way. And Soroban smart contract, this is like serve as a smart contracts platform integrated to the Stellar blockchain. We are now just like 19 days till the voting to go to the phase 0 rollout. So it allows developers to create and execute smart contracts on Stellar network. And these contracts are coded in Rust. And it requiring developers to set up a Rust tool chain. So for the third workshop, you actually need to install the Rust before coming there. We're going to inform you later as well, so you don't need to remember. But it's coded in Rust. And it requires you having some basic knowledge. And then, of course, like you will need an editor to like editing it. But for the second workshop, you don't actually really need to understand the Rust. Even third one, I will say that like our workshop speakers, instructors going to be showing things line by line. So even though you don't know the Rust, you can actually come and enjoy building. And once when you start to building your own further, you will need to learn Rust. But don't be afraid. Let's go through like a little bit explanation so that why Soroban itself is like well suited for Stellar. but it's actually platform agnostic. So it's not rely on Stellar. So you can employ Soroban to, various transaction processors, other blockchain, other layer 2 solutions. So Soroban itself can be used for other chains as well, and maybe it will get adopted to something else. And then the Soroban contracts going to be compiled into the native code for local testing, but it will be compiled to WASM for deployment. So the on-chain execution environment is exclusively supporting WASM contracts and run them within WASM Sandbox virtual machine. So due to this specific characteristic, we have a certain constraints. And then these constraints actually introduce that we are using very limited subset of the Rust language, not like full Rust. So if you are interested in, Soroban smart contract and I don't know Rust well yet, don't be afraid. It's using the limited set of the Rust line. So perhaps you want to look into it, and you need to just get used to with a specific set which is utilized for smart contract only, and perhaps it may not have a huge overlap if you're using Rust line for completely something else than blockchain, but it's quite common practice that most of Rust line based language across the blockchain space going to be having very limited subset in their practice. But it means that actually Rust standard libraries, which is called crates, cannot be directly available. So some crates may be adapted for smart contract purpose. Otherwise, they will not be really used. So it means, again, for most of you, even though some know Rust, of course, they're going to have an advantage. But you are starting pretty in the same line because you cannot really use existing Rust crates if it's not really adjusted for the contract purpose. And Soroban Smart Contract Platform, as a platform, it has a potential to support more other source languages. At the moment, it's just Rust, but they were kind of mentioned that it's considering to support other source languages. So maybe stay tuned. It's quite interesting to see how smart contract language or platform is getting evolved. Now, interesting part is a few days ago, we were expecting to having Soroban's protocol 20 updates, right? Soroban should have phase rollout, which has been delayed to kind of fixing some error or some bug. And now, I want to introduce a little bit about how that phase rollout going to be working, and perhaps how it get along with our education series, so that you can perhaps have a full benefit of it. So, phase rollout going to look like this. So phase 0, which going to be happening at 20th of February, if I remember correctly. Initially, it was scheduled for 30th of January, and it just pushed kind of about 3 weeks. This is in the stage of the ensuring network stability. So in general, last 2 years, Stellar has been actively working on integration of the smart contracts. So initially when it built for payment system, it didn't really require the smart contract system, just you want to making a fast transactions. But now you want to utilize this even more and having a different types of interaction on top of network. So it has been built last 2 years. And then it's already available on the testnet, so you can play with creating the crowdfunding form, payment app utilizing Soroban. But now it's just about to go to the mainnet. So if you actually stick around and building something and deploy by the end, you might be one of the first few people who actually deploy smart contract on mainnet. And how cool is that? So recently, Stellar Development Foundation and the maintainers of the critical Stellar SDKs unveiled that, hi, we're going to make the update. And then this is going to have the phase rollout, because this is one of the most significant upgrade in the history of the network. So that network performance, to make it secure, it's working well, secure, stable during all these transitions. Foundation and let's say maintainers decide to having a phased rollout approach instead of having everything at once. So phase 0 is immediately following the positive validator vote. So when 20th of February happen, it means the vote's going to be starting. And then when it passes, so if you want to be a validator, what you need to do, we talked about it. You need to be a Stellar core, and then you can check about how to run a node. And this can be a very fun experiment, because you can actually vote, not too late. If you still want to vote, you can actually join the node, and then you can try to vote. Its primary focus is on smoking test systems, basic contract execution testing, uploading network configuration upgrades. So all this is not even actually for developers nor users. So during this phase, developers are encouraged to continue utilizing the testnet, building and testing your app there. But then around, it's not specifically defined when is phase 1, but it's kind of 2 to 3 weeks in between those phases, alpha. So let's say 20th of February, when phase 0 happens, around 2 to 3 weeks later, they're going to be deploy and monitoring happening. So this is a time like monitoring contract impact to network performance, gradually increasing Soroban transactions capacity. So builders can actually deploy contracts. So this is a time you want to run and try your smart contract on mainnet. They can be really fun. Although it's not meant for end users yet, so you may not making a like big fuss about it. The focus here is like a monitoring if your contract is working well as expected, its performance is good as you see on testnet, and gradually increasing its capacity. And once when it's all good, now phase 2 is user-ready mainnet. So that time, like a user is going to be, using the smart contracts on mainnet. This is the important time booming. I assume a lot of like app going to be trying to utilize this time. This is going to be fun time. The users start to make certain smart contract uses on the mainnet. If you're building some products in Stellar, you can imagine like there are going to be a lot of supports there as well. So here is the kind of good timing if you want to test things out in Stellar. Next 4 weeks, try to play with play on testnet. Soroban going to be introduced by our Okashi team, and then Stellar Development Foundation, they're welcoming. So Morgan and Julian going to be sharing some more insights with you, how to build things. There's some materials showing different dApp challenge. And then, so let's say how many weeks? 3 weeks, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 7, so 2 months. In 2 months, perhaps you are aiming to making a smart contract, which is going to be used by users. And then you want to building now and test things, and you will be one of the first one who deploy the smart contract on the mainnet, which have the user. So I encourage you all to seize this moment, because be the pioneer who explore and leverage the capability of new things is always exciting. And then your contributions are going to be like shaping the future of the smart contracts on Stellar. So of course, if you join the node and if you're also voting, so please, if you're actually running a node, or if you decide to run a node after this session, if you have some questions, let us know. If you're actually participating in the vote, please let me know. That can be really like fun and exciting for me to hear that. Some resources I want to share is here. I know this is stupid because you cannot click the screen, so I will be trying to copy pasting and send it to you. I cannot. Okay, this is a little bit stupid. I'm gonna actually copy paste and send it to all of you later on in email. So one is like a Stellar, of course, dApp documentation, which is explaining if you're interested in issuing a set. I just like quickly saw that people were interested in creating your own asset. If you're interested in actually being an anchor, what kind of compliance needed, Stellar dApp documentation is a good way to check it out. Perhaps Anchor, you need to read like other bits more, but like in a developer perspective, this is really good documentation. Soroban is something you can check about, like what kind of syntax Soroban using it. Of course, like a second and third workshops are going to be something more about Soroban. Fourth workshop going to be actually continuing implementing indexer to it as well. But first one, you actually don't need anything because we're going to use the web-based IDE from Okashi. We saw that some people really love it. Yes, Matthias, thank you. Amazing, you're the best. And then another one I wanted to say is, and then the third one, you actually need a Rust. You need to install Rust, and then you need to have a Soroban CLI. Then you're gonna have some building some crowdfunding app together. There's like three others like I wanted to share. Is like a Stellar Quest. If you go there, it's quite like a funny. They're like you can kind of making each cast to learn more about the network, make some activities, interactions on network. And another thing is Stellar Soroban dApp challenge. Please check it out. It has like a multiple, I think at the moment 4 example, and soon to be more added. And amazing things. Julian, who is coming at the third workshop, he is the author of these challenges. So if you try challenges out, perhaps also like asking questions to him, and he's gonna be very, very happy to hear that. And then, ooh, So please also see the chat, like Matthias is like sharing a lot of links. And Stellar Laboratory is the one I just mentioned that like if you want to quickly create, if I click, can I share this one? No, it doesn't even click. I can draw. I never draw it like that. So Stellar Laboratory, please try things out. So if you go there, you can actually create your like a testnet key pair. It's on testnet key pair. So you create public key and private key, and then you can see multiple functions there to create. Let me check the quickly menu. So you can create the account, which you can create the key pair. Please don't share key pair with somebody else. And then you can try to get the testnet token using the friend bot from the testnet network accounts. You can build the transactions, you can sign transactions, try things out. So this is like a quite interesting tool to check it out, some basic interactions. I think that's pretty much it of the resource one. And because okay, Matthias shared this amazing one, lovely. So please like explore things out. And I wanted to say, so let's unlock your potential. This is like basically the copy of the Stellar Foundation sharing. There's a lot of like things to unlock, and then we actually going to see the moment of Soroban unlocking its actual potential with this rollout. So I'm very excited to share the news. These are the, of course, like Twitter handles. So feel free to follow us and getting some newest updates. If you want to particularly sharing, especially if you're building some project on Stellar, and you are just wishing to push your project to the mainnet, feel free to DM me on Twitter. Please start it with I was in the session so that I can distinguish between you and some Bitcoin scammers. And then please share what kind of project you're building. We will be very, very happy to hear that. That's pretty much it.
Thank you, Eomji. That was an amazing presentation, and I'm sure very useful to everyone listening. So, yeah, that was an amazing first workshop to kind of start the kick us off really in this 4-part series. I know there were a few questions in the chat, but some of them seem to be answered along the way, and we are running out of a bit of time. So I don't know if you still wanted to.
Yeah, I just realized I was like thinking if my workshop going to be too short, and I was like way over the time. Sorry, everyone.
I think, yeah. I think the best thing would be potentially if people want to put them in Discord, in our chat, then I'm sure that we can kind of get back to them later on, maybe, as we probably won't have enough time to get them out.
Exactly.
I know that people have been doing an excellent job in the chat in terms of helping each other out with any questions. So I really appreciate everyone that has been doing that. And it's great to see that we've already got such a good community spirit going on. But
yeah, I just shared the Discord link down there as it got recasted. So people, please join our Discord server. Once when you join Discord server, you can also click the role of the Stellar Educate. If you're already on our server, please check it out. The channel called how to opt in for the role. And then if you have Stellar Educate role, you're gonna get all the updates Michael gonna be sharing. And also, if you are not yet, actually, don't forget to sign up the program itself, not only on the Discord channel, because Michael is sharing the summary in the end. And then also, like when YouTube is updated with all the slide deck and so on, Michael going to be sharing all the details. So perhaps if you're not yet, please sign up. That's going to be helping you a lot to get all the updates.
Exactly. Yeah, Eomji's already summarized it very nicely. Obviously, this is just our first session. We will be back same time next week on Thursday. And that will be an introduction to Rust and Soroban without leaving the browser from Morgan Wild, who is the founder at Akashi. And this should be a technical workshop, and you'll be able to see like how you can use Rust to write Soroban smart contracts and deploy them onto Stellar, which should be very exciting. And I think I could see quite a lot of enthusiasm from Akashi in the chat, so I imagine that this one will be very well attended as well. But yeah, we will be leaving it there. Thank you again, Eomji, for this wonderful presentation. And
thank you.
I'll be seeing you all next week. Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.